5 words just changed the trajectory of this entire conflict. While the world was focused on the strikes hammering Iran's military infrastructure, a statement came out of Pyongyang that made every intelligence analyst from Washington to Tel Aviv stop what they were doing and pay attention. Kim Jong Un signaled his support for Iran publicly, and the message was as simple as it was terrifying. We are ready to help. Now, on the surface, that might sound like standard diplomatic posturing, the kind of thing authoritarian leaders say to grab headlines and score points against the West. But here's why this is different, and here's why you need to understand what's actually behind those words. North Korea and Iran have not just been casual acquaintances on the world stage. They have been quietly building one of the most dangerous military partnerships on Earth for over 4 decades. Sharing missile blueprints, trading weapons components, cooperating on cyber operations, and potentially exchanging knowledge that inches closer to the nuclear threshold than any of us would like to admit. What Kim Jong Un just did was take a relationship that has operated in the shadows for decades and drag it into the light at the worst possible moment. And the implications of that decision could reshape this entire conflict in ways nobody is fully prepared for. Welcome back to War and Wealth. Before we get deep into this one, and trust me, this story goes deeper than almost anything we've covered on this channel. Do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. We are tracking developments that are moving fast. The next update on this situation could drop at any moment. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's get into the most dangerous alliance you've probably never fully understood. To grasp why 5 words from Kim Jong Un sent shockwaves through the intelligence community, you have to go back to where this relationship actually began. Because it didn't start yesterday, and it didn't start with this conflict. The military partnership between North Korea and Iran traces its roots all the way back to the 1980s, during the brutal Iran-Iraq war that killed hundreds of thousands of people and left Iran desperate for weapons that the international community was largely unwilling to provide. Iran was isolated, sanctioned, and fighting for survival against Saddam Hussein's military machine, which was being supplied by multiple Western nations and Gulf states. Tehran needed missiles, and Pyongyang had them. North Korea became one of Iran's most important arms suppliers during that conflict, shipping Scud-B missiles to Iran at a time when almost nobody else would sell them weapons of that caliber. Those early transactions weren't just business deals. They were the foundation of a strategic relationship built on a shared principle that has held firm ever since the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and the United States was the common enemy that bound these two nations together. What happened after the Iran-Iraq war ended is where the story gets truly significant. Instead of the relationship fading away once the immediate crisis was over, it deepened and expanded into something far more sophisticated. Throughout the 1990s, North Korean engineers and missile technicians traveled to Iran to help develop the country's indigenous ballistic missile program. The crown jewel of this cooperation was the transfer of technology related to North Korea's Nodong medium-range ballistic missile, which became the foundation for Iran's Shahab-3 missile system. Now, let that sink in for a moment. One of the most important weapons in Iran's current arsenal, the missile that gives Tehran the ability to threaten targets across the Middle East, exists in its current form because of North Korean technology and expertise. This isn't speculation or conspiracy theory. It has been documented extensively by United Nations panels of experts, independent weapons researchers, and intelligence agencies from multiple countries. The Shahab-3 and its subsequent variants are essentially the children of North Korean missile engineering adapted and refined by Iranian scientists, but born from blueprints and knowledge that originated in Pyongyang. The cooperation didn't stop with the Shahab-3, and this is where the story starts to get genuinely alarming for anyone paying attention to global security. Reports from UN monitoring groups and various intelligence assessments have indicated that missile technology continued flowing between the two countries well into the 2000s and beyond, with North Korean components and expertise showing up in increasingly advanced Iranian systems. There were credible reports that technology related to the BM-25 Musan intermediate-range ballistic missile was shared with Iran, potentially giving Tehran access to designs capable of reaching targets far beyond the Middle East. North Korean technicians were reportedly present at Iranian missile test facilities, providing technical guidance and troubleshooting expertise that accelerated Iran's development timeline by years, if not decades. Every sanctions regime, every diplomatic effort, every attempt to isolate these two countries from the global weapons market only seemed to push them closer together, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of cooperation that has proven remarkably resistant to outside pressure. Now let's talk about what North Korea could actually provide to Iran in the current moment, because we are ready to help only matters if there's substance behind it. And the uncomfortable truth is that Pyongyang has a great deal of substance to offer. The most obvious category is ballistic missile technology, and not just the older systems that formed the basis of their historical cooperation. North Korea has made dramatic advances in its missile program in recent years, successfully testing intercontinental ballistic missiles, developing solid fuel rocket technology that makes missiles faster to deploy and harder to detect before launch, and reportedly making progress on hypersonic glide vehicles that could potentially evade existing missile defense systems. If even a fraction of this newer technology were transferred to Iran, it would represent a quantum leap in Tehran's strike capabilities, potentially giving them the ability to threaten targets in Europe and fundamentally altering the strategic balance that has defined Middle Eastern security for decades. But missiles are just one piece of what makes this partnership so dangerous, and arguably, they aren't even the most concerning element. North Korea has developed one of the most capable and aggressive cyber warfare programs on the planet, operating through groups like Lazarus and its various subunits to conduct operations that have stunned the cybersecurity world. These are the people behind the 2014 Sony Pictures hack, the W2Cry ransomware attack that crippled hospitals and businesses across dozens of countries in 2017, and the theft of billions of dollars in cryptocurrency that funds North Korea's weapons programs. Their cyber operators are skilled, disciplined, and operate with a level of state backing that few other hacking groups can match. If North Korea were to share cyber warfare tools, techniques, or even personnel with Iran, which already has its own considerable cyber capabilities, the combined threat could be devastating. Imagine coordinated cyber attacks targeting military communication systems, financial infrastructure, power grids, or water treatment facilities. Time to coincide with physical military operations. That's not science fiction. Those are capabilities that both nations have demonstrated independently and that could become exponentially more dangerous if combined. The category that keeps intelligence chiefs awake at night, though, the one that transforms this from a regional concern into an existential global threat, is nuclear technology. North Korea has conducted 6 nuclear tests and is believed to possess enough fissile material for dozens of nuclear warheads. They have developed the technical knowledge to miniaturize nuclear devices for delivery by ballistic missile, a capability that took them decades to achieve and that represents some of the most closely guarded technical knowledge on Earth. Iran, despite years of diplomatic efforts to prevent it, has been gradually advancing its own nuclear program, enriching uranium to levels that are difficult to justify for purely civilian purposes and maintaining research infrastructure that could potentially be redirected toward weapons development. The nightmare scenario that has haunted non-proliferation experts for years is a transfer of critical nuclear weapons knowledge from North Korea to Iran. Not necessarily a complete warhead, but the specific technical insights and engineering solutions that would allow Iran to cross the nuclear threshold far more quickly than its own program would otherwise permit. Whether Kim Jong Un would actually cross that line is one of the most consequential questions in global security, and his public declaration of readiness to help Iran has forced that question from the theoretical into the terrifyingly practical. There's another dimension to potential North Korean assistance that doesn't get enough attention, and that's the role of military advisors in conventional weapons expertise. North Korea maintains one of the largest standing armies in the world with over 1 million active duty personnel and decades of experience developing asymmetric warfare strategies designed to counter technologically superior opponents. Their expertise in tunnel construction, underground facility hardening, artillery tactics, and coastal defense could be directly applicable to Iran's military needs, particularly in the current environment where Iranian infrastructure is under sustained attack. We've already seen precedent for this type of cooperation. North Korean military advisors have been documented in various conflict zones over the years, from Africa to the Middle East, providing training and expertise to governments and groups aligned with Pyongyang's interests. The deployment of even a small number of specialized North Korean military personnel to Iran could provide significant assistance in areas like fortifying critical infrastructure, maintaining and operating advanced weapon systems, and developing tactical responses to ongoing military operations. The logistics of how North Korea gets weapons and technology to Iran is a story in itself, one that reveals just how sophisticated sanctions evasion has become in the modern world. Both countries have developed extensive networks of front companies, shell corporations, and intermediary nations that facilitate the movement of prohibited goods and knowledge. Ships have been caught carrying North Korean weapons components hidden beneath legitimate cargo. Diplomatic pouches have reportedly been used to transfer technical documents, and cyber-enabled communications have allowed sensitive information to flow between the two countries without ever physically crossing a border. The United Nations panel of experts that monitors North Korean sanctions compliance has repeatedly documented these evasion techniques, painting a picture of a relationship that has become remarkably adept at operating beneath the surface of international attention. Despite the best efforts of intelligence agencies and customs authorities around the world, the pipeline between Pyongyang and Tehran has proven extraordinarily difficult to shut down completely. And current circumstances may provide even greater motivation and opportunity for both sides to expand these covert channels. Washington's response to Kim Jong Un's statement has been measured publicly, but reportedly intense behind closed doors. American intelligence agencies are undoubtedly scrambling to assess whether North Korea's offer represents genuine intent to increase support or is primarily a rhetorical move designed to complicate American strategic calculations. The distinction matters enormously because it determines whether the United States needs to prepare for a significant escalation and the capabilities arrayed against it, or simply manage the political fallout of provocative statements. Sources familiar with intelligence assessments suggest that the truth likely falls somewhere in between. North Korea almost certainly intends to increase some forms of support to Iran, as doing so serves Pyongyang's interests by diverting American attention and resources. But the extent and nature of that support will depend on a complex set of factors, including the military situation on the ground, the risk of American retaliation against North Korea itself, and the practical challenges of delivering meaningful assistance across vast distances. Tel Aviv's reaction has been particularly intense because Israel has long viewed the North Korea-Iran axis as one of the most serious long-term threats to its security. Israeli intelligence services have invested enormous resources in monitoring the relationship between the two countries, and there have been reports of Israeli operations aimed at disrupting specific transfers of technology and components. The prospect of North Korea accelerating its support for Iran at this moment, when Israeli military operations are actively targeting Iranian military infrastructure, creates a deeply concerning dynamic where the degradation of Iranian capabilities could be partially offset by an influx of North Korean technology and expertise. For Israeli strategic planners, this transforms what might be a time-limited military campaign into a potentially open-ended challenge where the adversary's capabilities are continuously refreshed by an outside supplier. European capitals are also watching this development with growing alarm, and their concern goes beyond abstract geopolitical calculations to very concrete security implications. If North Korean missile technology allows Iran to develop systems capable of reaching European cities, the security architecture of the entire continent would need to be fundamentally reconsidered. European nations have already been grappling with the challenges posed by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the resulting demands on their military resources and strategic attention. The prospect of simultaneously needing to address a growing Iranian missile threat enhanced by North Korean technology could overwhelm the capacity of European defense establishments that have spent decades underinvesting in military capabilities. China and Russia occupy complicated positions in this equation, and their responses could significantly influence how the situation develops. China is North Korea's most important economic partner and has historically exercised some degree of restraint on Pyongyang's most provocative actions. Though the extent of that influence is often overstated, Beijing's calculus involves balancing its desire to avoid a major conflict that could destabilize the region against its strategic interest in seeing American power and attention diverted away from the Indo-Pacific. Russia, meanwhile, has its own evolving relationship with both North Korea and Iran, and the war in Ukraine has created new dynamics of cooperation between Moscow and these two countries that would have been difficult to imagine just a few years ago. The possibility of a more coordinated axis of resistance involving Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran is one of the most significant strategic developments of the early 21st century, and Kim Jong Un's public offer to help Iran can be understood as both a product and an accelerant of this broader realignment. The question of whether Kim Jong Un is bluffing or genuinely preparing to act is one that defies simple answers. Because North Korean strategy has always involved elements of both calculated posturing and genuine willingness to take dramatic action. Kim's regime has demonstrated repeatedly that it is willing to accept enormous risk in pursuit of strategic objectives, from conducting nuclear tests in defiance of the entire international community to developing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of reaching the American homeland. At the same time, North Korea has shown pragmatic awareness of its limitations and has generally avoided actions that would provoke a direct military confrontation with the United States that it cannot win. The current situation may offer a middle ground where Pyongyang can provide meaningful assistance to Iran through covert channels while maintaining enough ambiguity to avoid triggering a direct American response against North Korean targets. What makes this moment uniquely dangerous is not any single factor, but the convergence of multiple destabilizing elements simultaneously. The most dangerous development in this entire situation may be the one that hasn't happened yet, and that's the part that should concern all of us the most. If Iran begins to feel that its conventional military capabilities are being systematically degraded to the point where regime survival is threatened, the temptation to accept whatever North Korea is offering, including potentially nuclear-related assistance, increases dramatically. Desperation has historically been one of the most powerful drivers of nuclear proliferation, and a nation that feels its existence is at stake may be willing to cross thresholds that seemed unthinkable during peacetime. The international community's ability to prevent such a crossing depends on intelligence capabilities, diplomatic leverage, and military options that are all being stretched thin by the current crisis. For those of us watching from the United States, the situation demands attention and understanding because the decisions being made right now by leaders in Pyongyang, Tehran, Washington, and other capitals will shape the security environment that Americans live in for decades to come. The relationship between North Korea and Iran isn't a distant abstraction. It directly affects the missile threats our allies face, the cyber attacks our infrastructure might endure, and the nuclear proliferation risks that could fundamentally alter the world our children inherit. Understanding these connections and their implications isn't optional for informed citizens. It's essential. This story is far from over, and the next chapter could be written at any moment. War and Wealth will be here to break it down for you with the depth and honesty that this topic demands. If this video helped you understand something you didn't fully grasp before, share it with someone who needs to see it. Seriously, hit that share button right now because these are the kinds of stories that people need to understand and that don't always get the attention they deserve in mainstream coverage. Drop a comment below and tell me what you think Kim Jong Un's real intention is here. Is this a calculated bluff designed to distract and divide American attention? Or are we watching the early stages of the most dangerous arms transfer in modern history? I genuinely want to know your take because the discussions in our comment section are some of the most thoughtful I've seen anywhere on this platform. And your perspectives help shape how we approach these stories going forward. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications and stay with us, because this situation is moving fast and the next development could change everything. This is War and Wealth, and we'll see you in the next